It is time now for today's Talkback segment. Each day, we post a question on Court TV's social media pages. We gather your comments and questions and then respond right here on the show. Now, the suspect in the Memphis heiress murder was convicted of a violent kidnapping when he was just 16 years old. He served 20 years in adult prison on that offense. 2 years after that release, he's accused of kidnapping and killing Eliza Fletcher. And also in Memphis, 19-year-old Ezekiel Kelly is behind bars after last night's deadly shooting spree that killed 4 people. He was charged and convicted at 17 of other violent crimes, and he spent nearly a year in prison. So we asked you, should minors who commit violent crimes be prosecuted in the juvenile system where rehabilitation is the focus, or go into adult prison where there is less emphasis on rehab? All right, still with me, criminal defense attorney David Bruno and federal executive clemency attorney Tammy Allison. Guys, our first comment comes from GenCat. GenCat says the juvenile system. I think I read that young people are continuing to develop in maturity until their mid-20s. So rehabilitation has a strong chance of helping them understand where they went wrong and giving them a chance to make amends and contribute moving forwards. David, I'm going to go to you because I think that's absolutely true. I think the Supreme Court has given that the stamp of approval that our minds are not developed until our early 20s. But it's a continuing problem in our system because more and more we're seeing violent crimes committed by young people. Clearly, warehousing them in adult prisons can't be the answer. But your thoughts on this issue?
Sure. My thoughts are that it's impossible to answer the question generally because each particular case and each particular defendant needs its own consideration. It does depend on the age. It depends on the crime. And that's really what the state laws say, is that you can't have a blanket rule that you can't waive them up or that a certain age always gets waived up. There has to be a very particular analysis on the case and the defendant to determine whether or not it is the right choice. So it's a tough question to answer generally.
Yeah, no doubt. I like the way they do it in Michigan, where we see it in Ethan Crumbley's case. You know, he's been put because of the seriousness of the crime. I think he was 16 at the time. They put him in adult prison, but they check on him every 30 days to make sure that he's doing okay. So, you know, if that's the way you're going to go, I like that approach. Our next comment comes from Liberty. Liberty says the whole system needs to change. We need to put them in a facility where they can be counseled by PhD doctors who can figure out why they did what they did. Maybe in the 20 years he could have been rehabilitated, not just sit there and become more of a criminal than he was. Tammy, that's the fear, is that you take these young folks and you take them in, you put them in at 16 with the rest of these adult criminals, and all you're doing is making them more of a criminal.
You know, Liberty makes a very good point. If there are healthcare professionals there that can really speak to the root of the issue as to why that individual at such a young age chose to commit a violent crime, that could potentially reduce their risk of recidivism if they were to be let out. In these situations, we don't have the details or the facts as to what type of programming each one of these minors at the time of their initial convictions participated in. A lot of times facilities, even if they're in an adult facility, they do have different types of rehabilitation programs to make people better in case they come out so that they do not commit another crime upon their release. So I do believe that she's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know what the answer is, at least as far as that goes, but the resources are always difficult. Finally, our last comment comes from Jason. Jason says, what if it was your child that had been taken so violently? And again, that's why we don't have juries made up of victims' families, right? David, that's an absolute legitimate thought, but we've got to look at it a little differently.
Sure, and that's why prosecutors have the discretion as well. Prosecutors, they have one awesome authority, and I was one, just to look at the cases, look at the defendant, and decide what an appropriate disposition is.
Yeah, again, as you said, it really is an awesome, awesome responsibility. All right, guys, thank you so much for being with me tonight. Tammy Allison, David Bruno, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you on the show and get your insights. All right, we have to take a break, folks. You're going to be sticking